Graham Vincent, violin maker and musician. Vlog number 2. I just wanted to ask whether violin making is an art form or a craft, really. The bits that appeal to me most are the artistic side of it, really. So for me, it's a sort of a loaded question. But there are elements of violin making that have been affected massively by the approach that many people take to violin making, and also the classical music field in general. So what I'm going to say is probably going to be slightly contentious to many people, and many people will be entirely happy with the situation as it stands at the moment. So I'm not criticising that at all, but I'm addressing the sort of people who have a slightly different take on it, if that makes any sense. So I think if you went into an art gallery and said, I'd like some art, please, and they said, okay, we've got 5 copies of the Mona Lisa by different artists, and we've got a couple of other sort of copies of work by other slightly lesser known Italians from the same time. Which would you like? You'd be slightly taken aback. You'd say, well, haven't you got anything, just art by new artists that I could have a look at? And that's the sort of situation we're kind of slipping into with violin making. So personally, I don't follow any particular sort of pattern. I don't make copies of Stradivarius violins. I don't make copies of Guarneri's or Amatis. What I do is I'm influenced by those, but I have using that as a starting point, but then being guided by what I think is a beautiful form, so sort of moving in the direction of what I think artistically is more interesting. I have come up with my own form, which is most definitely not a copy of anything else. It's similar to other things, but it's not a copy. And I also, over and above that, I don't want to make copies and copies of that one violin. I start with the outline using a pattern, and I also start with things like the scale length, the body stop, the height of the bridge, those sort of immutable things that violinists need to be about the same so that they can move from one instrument to the next without it feeling totally alien. I start with those. But for example, when I start carving the front of a body, the plates, front and the back, I don't use any templates at all. I just carve by eye until I get the feel right. And I like the way that introduces variability into my different violins. I actually look for that. I think that's a good thing. Similarly, when I carve the neck, I don't follow patterns. I carve it until it feels good. That's what makes sense to me. And same with the scroll. I start with a rough pencil drawing generally, and then carve it by eye. And I like that. It means there is some variability within my violins, quite a large amount compared with many makers. Now, that may or may not be a good thing. I hope that there is consistency between the violins, but I hope there is some variability, and I think different people will be looking for slightly different things and find delight in the slight variation from one violin to another. So, is it a good thing? I don't know. I really don't know. If you want to know exactly what it is you're getting, then it would be a nightmare ordering a violin from me, because you will get the violin that my whim has sort of dictated, I'm afraid. So what I do is I don't take orders for violins. I make violins and then I offer them for sale. Much in the same way that, if you were going to be buying a Stradivarius, for example, and I'm not comparing myself to Stradivarius here, if you were going to be buying a Stradivarius, you wouldn't expect to walk into a shop and say, that Stradivarius you've got for sale is a wonderful instrument, but can you make me one that's 3mm wider or is slightly less brown? That would be absurd, and you won't find that perfect instrument. So rather than disappoint people's expectations because I've done something that is slightly different from what they thought they were going to be getting from me. I prefer to just make violins. People come along, have a look through them, and if they find their violin, then everyone's happy, whoopee-doo. So there we are, slightly contentious. I hope I haven't upset anybody. This isn't intended as a criticism of the way people work, it's just more an explanation of the way that I work, really. So keep playing, keep on making, and let's hope we get some better violins out of all of it, because we're all trying very hard to make the best violins that we can, I'm sure. So, thank you very much indeed. Have a look at me on Facebook, Instagram and all the rest. I'm sort of about 3/4 of the way through what will be my last batch of violins, so I will have about 10 violins finished in a few weeks. Well, having said that, I know that I've sold several of them already, but after that, subsequent to that, I'm actually going to be making them in smaller quantities, maybe 1 or 2 at a time, so that I can explore the sort of individual characteristics of each violin in depth as I work on it. And obviously it'll mean that from start to finish, if I'm only working on one, will be a much shorter period of time than if I'm working on a batch. Anyway, I've gone on far too long. Talk to you soon. Cheers, bye bye.